welcome to RealClearFetish Talks RealClearPlay. Today we are going to the Netherlands and talking with my friend Adam over there. So I'll call him in. Hello!
Hello. Sorry, the sound quality changed. Sorry, I'm technically challenged, so let's just start with that.
That's fine. No stress, no stress. We'll get there.
Oh, great. Okay, I think it's all set up now. Hello.
Well, we can see you perfectly and we can hear you. That's the main thing.
Oh, brilliant. Hi.
How are you?
Good. I'm very excited. I was just thinking to myself because the first time I ever heard of RealClearFetish was when I was volunteering at Antidote a few years back, and I remember the guys that were coming through the door, and yeah, you would have people just struggling, and of course we didn't get the fair sample of demographic. The people who did come to Antidote were struggling. And the top number one question that was always on people's mind was, how do I reconnect with my sexual self in a different way?
Yeah.
And then we would recommend check out RealClearFetish. There's, if you are into fetish, this is the place to go. This is the place to start. There's an entire community being built of people who want to discover something new, something different. And so
I will take that
full circle.
I will take that as a huge compliment, because that is what it is about. It is to reconnect with your sexuality and your fetish, and doing it in a safe manner. That is one of the goals, at least, with it. But we'll start the episode with I do 4 standard questions, and answer whatever you're comfortable with. If anything comes up you're uncomfortable with, just let me know and I'll steer the conversation in a different direction.
Thank you.
So the first question is, what do you prefer I call you? Name, pronouns, and title.
You can call me a name, he, him, whatever. It's the guy. I'm very easy. So yeah. And by the way, I love the fact that this question now became a standard and opening up a conversation.
Yeah.
And I love it. I love that we now live in a world where we give so much consideration to people.
It is important to ask people's pronouns now. I feel it's important. It's important just to make sure that you have the right approach people. And it's such an easy question to do. It's not uncomfortable. Like people say, "Oh, I don't want to be asking that." It's really easy.
And when people watch your show, sorry, one more thing. I'll be stopping you every now and again. What is fun watching your shows, previous podcasts and previous episodes, is that you never quite anticipate what the answer is going to be. It's so full of surprises. So it's pop, it's a master. You have been introduced to a complete new array of answers. I love it.
I try to spread the umbrella as much as I can with different types, different approaches to recovery and so on, and that's one of the reasons having you on is also really important, because the whole subject we're going to be talking, at least some of the stuff we're going to be talking about, is really interesting to me. Second question, tell me a little bit about yourself.
So my name is Adam and I live in the Netherlands, as you said. I'm a yoga teacher and I'm a massage therapist. I used to do a lot of chems back in the day. I went through a very lengthy recovery process. Through the recovery process, I have inquired more into my fetish side, and maybe there'll be more about that later on. And right now I am at a place where I can dip back into specific drugs on specific occasions.
Mm-hmm.
I'm an occasional drinker. I like to think of myself that's someone who is not always sober, but he is sober-ish. So And most of the time you will encounter me without any substance, but I do love a beer at the end of the day. And I do, I have specific parameters for specific drugs, and that helps me stay in control. And on my recovery journey, I've discovered the importance of connecting with my own body, and the journey of learning about what it's like to be in my body, what brings me joy, what doesn't. Learning some kind of somatic intelligence around all of these things has been quite a revelation, and I think that's also brought me into massage practice and yoga practice, and so now I kind of live and breathe what really brings me joy.
Fantastic, fantastic. Third question. Well, you've already kind of answered it, because I was going to ask completely sober, clear-headed, or social drinker, but you've already kind of answered the question already.
Yeah, sorry, I went ahead. I knew that it was
fine.
one of the questions.
That's absolutely fine. It's for me, it's interesting to hear people's different takes on what sober is to them, because for some people it is cannot touch anything that's mind altering.
Yeah.
And for me, I drink Red Bull. Some people might discuss the caffeine in it, and it's quite, but that's to the extent I go, and that's my personal journey. And when and it's nice and it's refreshing to talk to someone who can talk honest and open about being sober-ish, as you said, which is really cool. And it's about finding what works for you. Yeah. So.
Yeah. Thank you.
I'll jump to the last question. What is ClearPlay to you, and why is it important?
ClearPlay is a play that allows me to connect with the other person, to be fully present for the other person, to allow myself to feel vulnerable with the other person. And for that, I choose not to do any substances. So one of the hard rules, so I have a set of hard rules and I have a set of soft rules when it comes to drugs and alcohol. Hard rule is doing it always sober. Sorry, see, foreigner. Sometimes the pronunciation doesn't go the way that I want. So clear play means to be able to connect, and to do so you have to do it without any psychotropic substances.
Yeah, it is, and it's funny when I talk to a lot of people, especially people in recovery. The focus is much more now. We focus on connection with ourselves, connection with the persons we might be playing with, and the funny thing is, in drug taking, we were looking for connection, but what drugs do is disconnect in most cases. Yeah, it's such a it's a mind fuck. It's like, why were we doing that? Because that's just disconnecting everything. Really, you just turn the off button and then you kind of go on autopilot.
Yeah. Hence the hangover, the emotional hangover of feeling a sense of shame and a sense of confusion once the drug effect has worn off. Because this intensity that you thought you've just experienced, that level of intimacy, suddenly disappears, and you just feel so alone. Which is, and that just adds to the complete mindfuck of this whole setup. It's, you feel so intact with someone. How can you just moments later feel so completely disconnected?
Yeah. So you mentioned you had a period in life where you were really into the drug taking. What brought you to the point where I need to make a change? What was the trigger for that?
It was the moment when I was diagnosed with HIV. And you hear two types of stories, at least. I mean, you hear all kinds of stories, but I think they operate on a continuum of two major binaries, and one is I've either been doing lots of drugs and HIV was a wake-up call, or I've been doing lots of drugs, HIV happened, and now after that I started spiraling. And then you have these two opposites, and there's a lot of variations in between. For me, it was a major wake-up call. It was first, it was a realization of the reality of risks that I've been taking, but then also the responsibility that I've now had to myself to take better care of myself, because my health situation had changed, and so the behaviors had to change as well. And that was the starting point.
Well, as you say, there's different ways of kind of each to their own rock bottom, if you could say, or wake up call.
Yeah.
Or and for me, it was because I had my first drug psychosis, and that was not fun. And I still have some of the PTSD from that, or I wouldn't even call it that, but definitely there's some things in my head now where that situation, I know it was not real, but it still feels real to me.
Yeah.
So we're all different and different stories, and I'm quite happy you're open about it and you're comfortable talking about it, because it is important. And I sometimes am baffled that I got out of my drug addiction still being negative. How that happened, I had no clue, because I was not being careful whatsoever. And this is before I went on PrEP as well. So it's almost a miracle I got out without any health consequences afterwards. So I'm really happy that it made that change for you. Of course, not happy for you becoming positive. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But it is important.
I know
all of a sudden you have to take care of your health.
Yeah, and it's an interesting one, because I think the paradox of it all is the fact that if it wasn't for the fact that I contracted HIV, I really don't know where I would be right now. If it wasn't for that, I really needed something to shake me to the core. I needed a moment of complete crisis to stop me in my behavior. At least help me have recover some sense of self-awareness in my behavior, because I was at some point completely lost. And if it wasn't for the deadly virus that I now carry within me, I think I would be actually dead by now. I really don't know. I've had so many people so many friends who have passed away, whose stories didn't end up as well as mine had, and yeah, you never quite know where this is going to end. So yeah, it's horrible that it took that moment of crisis to take me where I am now, but sometimes that's what's needed.
Yeah, it's sometimes a smack in the face helps. It's what it is, isn't it? But it's nice that you're comfortable having that honest and open conversation about that. So yeah. When you started making the changes to your drug taking and so on, how did you approach that? Because I know you do yoga and so on. Was that a part of your recovery, or was that something that come further down the line?
So one of the things that I really realized about my life was that number one, I was completely unhappy. Number two, I was, yeah. You think, and yet it took me quite a while to come to a very obvious conclusion. When I stopped, I realized how unhappy I was. It was like, oh, this is why I'm doing it. But then you are so, there's so much substance infused into your system constantly. Yeah. You no longer know what it is that you feel and how you are, what's going on in your head. Everything is so completely enmeshed. So to disentangle the particular elements of the cycle that I was participating in, and which was in the end playing against me, it was quite a journey. So yes, as a result of a bit of a self-reflection, I've realized that I was not very happy with where I was in my life. One of the things that was making me unhappy was my work. I was working at the time in a supply chain. It was not a career or a kind of job that I've chosen. It just sort of happened. And at the time, not to like pointing the fingers, but I was working for Marks and Spencer's, very corporate over there. And as much as I love men in suits, just wearing one day in and day out, it was a complete nightmare to me. And so I've decided one of the things that I need to change is work. And I started thinking about what else could I do with my life. And what really got to me is the fact that I do love physical contact. I do love connecting with other people, and I love. I'm a very sensual person to begin with, and I just and I'm a pleaser as well at heart. So I thought, well, why not touch people for money, you know? So
yes,
and on top of that, there was a structure that with physical work, there was safety in it. So what my number one drug and my number one problem was crystal meth. And whenever I used Tina, I would struggle heavily with inflammation of the joints. So huge swelling in my hands. You could see my knees, they were red, like radiating Chernobyl type of red. It did not look healthy. And people were wondering for a while, what is going on with this guy? I thought that having a physical job where I would be self-employed and therefore reliant on doing the work that I needed to do, and then that work having the requirement of being physically fit for appropriate performance would keep me in a safety net of a sort. That would give me some kind of protection and help me with navigating back to reality whenever I would go back into drug taking, which it was like a pendulum. So I would stop, I would go back, I would stop, I would go back, and then the intensity would lessen over time. But I realized that quitting chems was not just a snap of a finger, and it would be a long journey. And that's exactly how it was. But having that kind of job really, really helped. And on top of that, there's that sense of being with yourself, being with other people. So now it's not only allowing myself to be vulnerable and close to other people and my personal life, but it just opened the door to so many new relationships, professional and otherwise. Friendships were built as a result of the work that I do. It just has opened so many doors that I didn't quite anticipate.
Yeah, it's that thing when you've been in this like drug loop and you kind of want to change things afterwards. It can be a lot of work, but also very gratifying. And it's like for me, starting the group, RealClearFetish was a big change for me. Doing this is a big change for me. It also holds me a little bit accountable in a way, so I can't allow myself going off tangent. I'm not feel worried about ending up using drugs nowadays. It's not what it is. I get my triggers. I have my bad days, and sometimes I have to kind of stop myself in certain behaviors. But I know when they're there, and I know when I'm in my addict head, definitely. Mm-hmm. And it's just about picking up on that. And it's about having, like you say, you have your hard limits and you have your soft limits. And there's definitely things where I have a hard limit with, and I will not approach that to keep myself safe. And that includes if I play with men, they need to be sober, and that's non-negotiable. And it's as much as I like cock, doesn't mean that I'm going to risk my sobriety just for one.
Yeah. Beautiful. Amen, sister.
Oh, I'll step off my soapbox now. But so with the doing yoga and massage therapists and so on, were you doing that before you became sober or soberish, or was that something you learned after and that
No,
became your thing?
that was part of the journey. It was, my idea was, well, a realization on the journey was that I was completely disconnected from my body. Let's take fetish for example. It was fetish to me represented for many years, especially during the chemsex days. It was just a tick of the box on the list of things that you're supposed to like or supposed to enjoy, just so that your market value would go up on the Grindr app or whatever app you were using. The more box you tick, the more chances you had in turning that into the legal tender that is cock. And so yeah, and so at the end, once that the value of cock return lessened with my ability to realize that it came at a heavy price on the apps, I started also realizing that, and what is it that I'm really into? What is that I enjoy? I feel like I was so conditioned for so long into what is it that others expected me to enjoy or like, or what is it that I needed to put out there in order to be liked and noticed. I completely lost sense of what it is that is true to me. And it took a long time of self-inquiry and discovery and trials and errors. And with that came also a sense of arriving in my own body. And so massage and yoga were also these two things that I've discovered along the way. I wanted to pursue it professionally, but I also inquired into it in a more casual way. One of the things that I was doing was in Neil's yard, you would have these naked massage exchanges led by Andy Seitz, who's passed away since. He was just a wonderful being at the center of an entire community of people who loved naturism, of people who loved sensuality, who loved just being with other gay men, naked, making it a beautiful experience that wasn't necessarily sexual. It was erotic, it was energizing. There was an erotic energy behind it, but didn't necessarily lead to anything sexual. Definitely not in the room that he commanded. And that just blew the lid off my pot. So it was like, what? Being naked and you're not
having sex? Are you? There's something wrong.
Are you mad? What is this? And I mean, I'm maybe turning this statement into a bit of a comedy, but it really has blew my mind. This is possible? Not having to suck somebody's cock when the cock is in front of you? Wow. So discovery of the notion of sensuality, what it meant to touch, what kind of touch I enjoy. I enjoy giving and I enjoyed receiving. What was pleasure? What my body enjoyed, what my body didn't enjoy. To name these things and then play along the lines of this is what I want, this is what I don't want, and being able, especially the things that you don't want, to be able to name them, even though that might reduce your market share, so to say.
Well, yeah. But it's also being okay with that. That's the thing as well.
Yeah, precisely. And have the courage to know yourself to a point where you realize that the people who will refuse you are probably the people who you wouldn't want to have in your life anyway. which is fine. You know, we're not for everyone. We're not meant to be for everyone. We are just different, and that difference makes us special. And so massage helped, and yoga helped. I remember going to, so there's this guy named Charlie. He used to do these community yoga classes in Vauxhall. Every Thursday morning. They were for free. He got a lottery fund, so he could just do free yoga classes. And you know, I'm a cheap pocket, so anything for free, I'll go for it. And so every Thursday I was there, and I think that this first encounter with yoga, with the sense of you are contained in the frame of the yoga mat, so there's a sense of stillness, and yet there's a movement and breath. There's this velocity, and yet there's no movement at all. It's like this concept of, like, I would have these outbursts, like I want to just burst out with the energy. I felt trapped in a way, but there was something so uncomfortable about sitting there and breathing. The challenge of it was also an invitation, and that invitation was part of opening a completely new set of doors for myself. And I'm very glad I did, because then that led me on to becoming also a yoga teacher, and again, a completely new perspective of what it is to inhibit yourself and feel.
I think it's especially when we're talking to people who have used crystal in the past, the whole concept of sitting still is such a foreign concept, because we spent so many hours completely off or not running around doing nothing and everything. So all of a sudden having to sit down or meditate, yoga, stuff like that is a very foreign concept, especially when you're in early recovery, because you just can't sit still at the start. And it's something that comes with time and practice. And I'm 4 years down the line. I still struggle with sitting still. But it's definitely better. And that's with work and doing things that sometimes are uncomfortable.
Yeah. And maybe it is I think at that point I also figured out the things that came easy were the things that I would go for first. And these would be not always necessarily things that would play to my favor. So part of the journey was also discovering that the initial discomfort maybe is good for you. Maybe there's some learning process that you need to do in order to come out on the other end as a better person.
Yeah.
The easy thing was to just call the dealer on Friday night and get the stuff that you needed. The difficult part was to sit still and sit with yourself and with your thoughts. And that was tough.
Absolutely. So if I remember correctly, you also do yoga classes for people who are recovering from chemsex. Am I correct in that?
I guess, well, I did. So that's especially during
you've
the
done
lockdown.
it in the past.
I've done it in the past. At the moment, the project is on hiatus, waiting for a new breath of fresh air and inspiration to what it could become in the future. During lockdown, that's the thing with Corona. Touch became suddenly a point of taboo, and getting close to people became a possibility of danger. And so I was out of work almost overnight, and that was tough. And here in the Netherlands, the rules would sway back and forth, and last winter was particularly bad, and so I was out of work for months. And during that time, you have a choice of just sitting around and feeling sorry for yourself, or actually putting this time into something creative and giving yoga classes for
home.
What's that?
Baking a lot of banana bread at home. I don't know.
I did in the beginning, but once we realized, after week 3, and so I have 2 partners, and by the week 3, when there were 2 cakes a week popping out of the oven, it's like it had to stop. It just had to stop. Belgian beer was one problem. Cakes was a completely new set of disadvantages that were affecting all of us and our sense of self.
As you talk, when you talk about lockdown and the taboo of touch, I remember at one point last year, I kind of like, when did I physically touch another human being? Not even like a hug, just a handshake. And I realized it was like 3 months of not any physical contact with anyone. I wasn't even craving sex. I was just craving a hug at that point. I was just like a physical hug or some sort of interaction. How is that? I'm assuming you probably have dealt with clients that now have issue with touch and kind of there's some anxiety around it. Have you felt that in some of your work?
Well, so like going back to the yoga classes so the classes were for guys who were either sober or sober-ish, like myself. And you had a bit of a peek into people's living rooms, so people's lives, and you would have guys at different stages of their drug taking process or recovery process. I made the only request that I have made for people is to be sober for the class. Apart from that, everybody was welcome, with of course making everybody aware that if you find it triggering to see somebody who's high on the call, maybe this is not for you. But I think all of us were so confused in how we interacted with each other. You would have people who haven't had a single human being in their close parameter for months, for weeks, for months at a time. Then you have people who would only have that little bubble. And if that bubble didn't turn out to be the best person to be around, sort of they were the trigger for them, then you were just stuck in that loop of unhealthy behavior. And for myself as well, it was just very tough. And I consider myself lucky because, I have two partners, I have people to touch. But the way I am conditioned is I love the stability and continuity of a relationship, but I also crave the adventure. I quite crave novelty. I need different relationships and people in my life. And that was a very difficult period of feeling contained to a point of the walls closing in at some days. And now I see people who maybe at this stage it's not so much the touch is no longer the topic, but I see a lot of people who are coming in with a burnout. They've been so overworked. The priorities have shifted from your personal life to work life, and when we're working from home, you have given it everything, and to a point of complete forgetting completely about your own needs. And then at some point the body just says no.
It is this thing of you feel like your work life merges with your private life in a way because you are in the same space constantly. I try to make a point of when I'm logged on, that's when I'm working, and when I logged off, don't look at the laptop and so on. I do have working hours, so it's not necessarily that big of an issue, but I also try to keep it in the desk space and not move around with the laptop too much, because there is a temptation just to sit on the couch with the laptop when you work from home. But all of a sudden your relaxed space becomes a workspace. And it's important to have pockets of, especially when it's about work, you need to be able to switch off from that. But there's also a difference between working from home and trying to work in quarantine. It's two very different things. And someone said that to me last year because everyone is like, oh, well, just work from home, it's fine. It's like, yeah, but you still have the anxiety and what's going on, what's going to be the next step. When with all this, and now we're coming to the end of 2021 and we're still in the mess with it. So it's
there's this psychotherapist, I don't know if you've ever heard of her, Esther Perel.
No,
I follow her. Oh, she's wonderful. So she has this podcast where she brings couples into a therapy room, and these are sort of recorded consultations. And she did an entire series during lockdown, couples in lockdown.
Mm.
And one of the things she said, which I really loved, the working from home turned into working with home. Home became that multidisciplinary space. Suddenly the same space had to serve as a play space, as a working space, as a dining space, as an entertainment, as going out. Everything was contained in the same four walls. So how do we manage through that? And then she talks about the number one thing was the boundaries. And as you said, certain time comes, you don't look at your laptop, you just switch away and you become something else. And maybe that is the beauty of fetish. It's the boundary comes with a new skin, with a new look, with new clothes. You no longer yourself from that moment on. This becomes a complete different space.
What's been your biggest surprise in kind of leaving the heavy drug days behind you? What is the biggest surprise in your fetish life that's popped up? It's like, oh, I'm into this. What's the biggest surprise?
Good question.
I think, what would you never do again because it was not you at all? It was just the drugs doing it.
I think fisting was not for me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's.
But that is a big, like you mentioned, that's a big tick box for your kind of thing, especially when you're in drug scene. Fisting kind of comes up a lot. And if you're not into it, you're almost a bit weird. So, yeah.
It's, I mean, you know, and I've tried it on both ends. And both times I would be extremely nervous. So the time when you're supposed to completely relax and ease into the process, where you have to trust, my anxiety would kick in. And because you were high, it would be hypered to a level that I was not comfortable with.
Yeah.
But so that's one of the things that that's not there. Things like water sports, I thought I was into it, maybe to a degree. Not so much. Since the drugs went away, that hasn't been part of my thing. Ropes, on the other hand, that's still very much in the field of my fascination. There's an element of art. There's an element of creativity behind the whole thing. There's something meditative.
Actually, talking of ropes, if you go back to season 2, I think in the last episode, I have a whole episode about rope work. Yeah. Oh yes,
I know.
With Christo.
And I love your interview with Christos.
Yeah, it was a very fun episode, and definitely a fun thing to explore, because that's never 100%. Been in my periphery. I'm a little bit, it's like, put a pair of handcuffs on him, that's fine. But the whole, like, learning the intricacies of rope, I don't think I have enough of an attention span to do that. But then again, you learn new things about what you're into. So did you do fetish stuff before you started doing drugs, or did you find some of the fetish stuff whilst you did drugs? Because that's a big difference in some people's story. Yeah,
I think to some degree fetish and drugs were intertwined.
Yeah.
And as I said before, it was just an ability to be able to tick more and more boxes so that you increase your market value. Coming out of the drugs, however, I think I really wanted to inquire with more and more with that side of myself. So this is like a short side story, because when I was a little boy, I was sexually abused.
Yeah.
And I think that experience has really shaped how I felt about anything connected to the body or sexual. Body represented danger.
Yeah.
And fetish allowed me, in a way, to put a filter on that. In that filter, I was no longer myself, and I could play and pretend to be someone completely different. And with that, I was able to explore in a way that felt safer, that felt more comfortable, that gave me a completely new set of rules or ideas about the encounters and people and myself. But it only helps through chemsex world as well, because it was a little bit more playful. I liked people who were into different things because I could discover something new and interesting. I really liked the theatricality of it. But eventually, I think fetish also became a thing that was a barrier, because I never had a good sense of my basis of what it is that I want or what it is I like as a person without any additional paraphernalia. And then eventually fetish became just a form of an obstacle. So at some point I just had to go pure with drugs and with anything else. It just had to be about the encounter and the people and feeling naked and comfortable. And at that point, naturism came into play, and that was like a complete new discovery. But now I think I came full circle, and I feel the thing that really remains now is ropes. To me, that's the most fascinating thing.
And that goes very well hand in hand with naturism.
Yes, precisely. And it's so simple, and it's so meditative, and it's so just like these things I mentioned before, that sense of vulnerability can be explored to such limits with that. It's to give yourself, to give trust, to feel naked and to feel bound by someone and feeling comfortable with that. There's poetry behind it. I love it.
You're getting all, I can feel that you really, really love that thing. And it's, it's so important. It's a lot of people I talk with who's done the drug journey, either they had fetish before the drug taking or they found fetish in drug taking. And there's a lot of confusion when you come out. It's like, what was crystal and what was me and what am I in?
Yeah.
And I always ask the question, did you have fetish before drug taking or whilst you were taking drugs? Because that is two very different things. Of course, there's overlaps in different situations and so on, but it's also the severity. How difficult is it to figure out what is you and what is the drugs? It takes time. But it sounds to me you've kind of found some things about yourself after the drug taking with the rope work and the naturism, where you found, actually, this is me. This is what I like, and not all the other stuff.
Yeah, but I think also there was a period of time at the beginning stage of recovery where fetish was, again, that sort of a helpful frame that helped me transition from one person to another, because it wasn't just, oh, there were the drugs and now you're sober and there's nothing else. It was a slow transition, complete new person that you were going to become. And there was a period of going to fetish parties, going to events that had a specific theme in mind, that had some kind of outfit or activity that helped you frame your behavior. And with that frame, you could go in clean or with a couple of drinks or whatever you chose, but allowed you to have a journey that felt a little bit safer, that wasn't too drastic. And so there were lots of parties along the way that I would go in without any substances, but having an outfit, it felt like I had an armor, and that armor protected me. It was extraordinary. And that was a big part of the journey as well.
That's fantastic. That sounds like a really good start anywhere. It's well, when I'm in leather, that's my armor. That's where I feel comfortable. That is when people ask me what my fetish is. I have loads of different fetishes, but I always come back to leather. That is always my main one. And that's,
by the way, your outfit is spectacular.
Oh, thank you, thank you. I've probably said this before on the podcast. I do a RuPaul when I sit here. I just have the top half on. I know,
What?
I'm a bad leather man.
Where's the bottom part?
I'm
No, my question is, instead of leather on the bottom part, what's there? Are you just naked?
I'm not standing up, so you're not going to see it. But I'm not naked. Let's say it like that. I'm not doing my Naturist today. No.
Not today, Satan.
Actually, I am contemplating going to a buff event tonight, which is a semi-naked event. So, it was meant to be us talking tonight.
There you go.
Yeah.
You can just go in with fresh knowledge from your podcast.
That's the thing.
I've heard about that naked thing.
So I wouldn't categorize myself as a naturist. I've definitely done naked parties and so on. How is the naturist scene in the Netherlands?
It is yet to be, well, so no. Yeah, okay. So we live in The Hague. The Hague has a beach which has a gay section. Well, it has a naturist section which then is taken over by the gays, obviously.
Of course.
Of course. And you have a complete section of dunes where on a hot summer day where there's all 5 of them in a year, you see these little heads popping out and look like meerkats and just look right, look left, hide. So this is the extent of what I've experienced through naturism here. I've organized a few naked yoga classes on the beach, all 3 of them, and that's actual number. There were 3 of them because the last time was shit. And apart from that, there's more to be discovered. I've done some naked yoga classes here too. They have great scene. They have great teachers in Amsterdam. It's brilliant. So there's lots of naturists. Oh, and then wow! I really discovered more than I thought I did. There is also naked bike rides, but we didn't participate last year. But we will. The moment is back.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Well, we have naked bike rides here in London as well. Once a year.
I did it every year, and I loved it. I miss it so much.
I think it's great, but I'm definitely not comfortable enough to do that. I admire the people who can. No, I'm too shy for that, and I'm a massive gearhead. I like having things on, not taking them off.
You need your armor. You need your armor.
And that's
understandable. That is completely understandable.
Yeah.
Well, to me, my armor is that vulnerability. I think that armor is the courage just to be naked and not care.
When I've done naked parties, I've always had a really good time, especially when you get to a point where you forget you don't have clothes on.
Yeah.
But it does take a
beautiful moment.
It does take like maybe half an hour before I'm like, okay, I'm fine. Completely. I'm just gonna run through the room doing the helicopter or something. I don't know. Especially when you don't drink, you don't have that. I was about to say Dutch courage, but I'm not sure if that's appropriate. I can say that.
I approve.
You approve. But yeah, it does. You kind of have to get your head around it, but then you get to a point it's like, well, everyone's naked. It doesn't really matter. But I have to admit, when I was in Gran Canaria in October, I'm still not comfortable doing naked on the gay beach. I just don't feel comfortable doing it. But hopefully at some point I will feel comfortable doing it.
We just have to go on holidays together.
Sounds like fun.
Like the moment, so and that's another thing. The 3 of us, we love naked resorts. We love naked enclaves where we can just arrive, take our clothes off, and that's it. That's the end of the story. It's just so.
How long have you been in the throuple?
In the throuple, it's a long story. Well, so we've known each other since 2018.
Mm-hmm.
The first year was a lot of courting and figuring out how this could work. And I think from that moment on, it started becoming a thing. At first, there was one of the men who had like 2 relationships, and I think over 2 years now that we were a throuple.
Fantastic, fantastic. We
Yeah.
are. It's so nice to see that it's that kind of setup is happening more and more, especially here in Europe. I remember when I was in a throuple, God, the side eyes I would get from people was like, that won't work, and that's weird, and da, da, da.
Yeah.
And now it's almost normal.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, oh, okay, so I must have started a trend. I don't know.
You have.
Yes.
You have indeed. Whenever there would be doubts, I would point to like he did it.
I did it. I did it. It's the same with puppy play. I used to do puppy play before it was cool.
Wait, there's a comment. Sorry, can I just? There's the charm of Gran Canaria Gay Beach. I've always been naked there. October 2, after missing last year. This year was a blast. Ah, I wish I was there this year.
Gran Canaria in October was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Yet again, you talk about like navigating sober life and like hard boundaries and soft boundaries. I definitely realized on this holiday, because I went in 2020 as well, where everything was closed. And it was the best holiday I've ever had. I was there for 17 days. I was so relaxed and so on. Not saying that this holiday was bad, but because things were open and there was events on, I felt more obliged to have to do things. So I definitely have now realized I need to be better at balancing it for myself, because it affected my mental health a little bit at the end of it. And in 2020, I wasn't ready to go home. This year, I was like, I'm ready to go now. I've had my fill.
Yeah.
I need to go home.
Yeah.
And it wasn't a bad holiday. It's just a learning experience.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it's also a weird time. So I went to London a month ago, and that was the first time in like almost a year and a half. And it was crazy. And to see the difference between here and the UK, how things are just regularly open, and you can go to parties, and I see what you mean and feeling obliged that you like, because it's on and it's happening, you feel like, oh, well, I need to make the most of it. And there was that sense for me as well. I felt like I should be out every night because we don't have it in the Netherlands. I need to make the most of it. But to be honest, after a couple of nights of that, I'm like, you know what? I'm fine. I think at certain points, the sense of age and the sense of age arriving in your body, and that tiredness that we all struggle with after Corona is, do I have to go out and be dancing till 4 a.m.? Can I just go to bed? It's helpful. It's really helpful sense of, you know what, it's fine. Like this party will be put on next month. I'm not going to miss out.
This is what I always say to people, especially when they're in early recovery. The parties will still be there. If you're not ready to go out, wait. It's your health and your mental health and your physical health and all that is more important. Your sobriety is more important than any party you can go to. Even if you feel like you're obliged or you're missing out, it's just so important in the early days. You need to have those boundaries and kind of go, okay, I can go next month, and that's fine.
Yeah.
And that was such an epiphany for me that, oh, I can say no.
Right? Just like with sex for me, like what, naked, not sucking somebody off? What? It's but yeah, boundaries isn't like and that's another hard rule. If I'm to engage with any drugs, I need to be very specific. What kind of drugs, how much, what is the event, how long, what time is the cutoff point. Super detailed to a point of annoyance, but I am a bit of a control freak, and that really helps because I have clarity over what's going to happen. Within that space, there's another room for movement, but it's a movement that never is going to cross a line where it becomes dangerous.
Yeah, I was about to ask, because sometimes I definitely know from myself, as soon as something goes into my system, any drug of any sort, the goalpost moves a little bit.
Right.
It's like, oh, then I want more of that or more of that. Or do you find sometimes if you are in those spaces, can it be tempting to just go off? Or do you feel like the rules you put in place or the plan you put in place keeps you safe?
I think so. There hasn't been an occasion where that was, let me think, temptation. How do I deal with temptation? I think so. Like, there's a different when you like completely drunk, let's say, or completely off, just losing the plot. That's one thing, and that's the edge that I'm conscious that there's there, and I'm very careful not to approach it, because that's the point where you know, when you have that sense of what did I just do for the last half an hour? That's the scary area. So that's one thing. So try not to get to a point where you are you've lost that sense of control or consciousness, or consciousness, and with that sense of control, there's another thing of temptation. I don't think. No, that's not there to be. And I'm happy to report that it's yeah. If I put a plan in place, and like talking about the hard rules, I think by now, because I've did so many trials and errors, the ones that I have in place that work really well for me. So I've never had this, oh, wouldn't this be nice? No, because I remember all the shit times, and I know this is not a fairy tale. I know exactly where it's gonna go. So yeah, not really. No temptation.
No, do you know what? It requires a certain person to be able to do that and stick to the plan. I'm definitely not that person. Hence, I don't touch it at all. Do I wish I could? I'm not shy to admit that if I could still do some of the stuff I used to, I probably would, because some of it was fun. It wasn't all bad. A lot of it was shit. But it wasn't, we wouldn't keep going back if some of it wasn't good. It was only at the end of my using it was horrendous. It never starts out bad, because then you wouldn't do it again. That's the thing. It slowly creeps in on you.
You know what? It's like going on holidays. It's not that we hate the life that we have, but it's just to be able to step away from that life, but you step away from it with the idea of return. So I think for me, at least, like the drug thing is that little holiday. It's like, I know where I'm going, I know for how long, and what's gonna, like, I have a general idea what activities I'm gonna partake in. And I also have a precise plan of going back. There's a ticket bought, and I don't plan of going back on that holiday for a certain amount of time. It's just a destination for that specific period of time. This is maybe how I would frame it. It's a sort of, I would do it, and I would do it with specificity, and I would do it with the idea of return, and with that, this, dealing with the consequences. So, and this keeps me also in check. It's, you have people you rely on, you have work, you have your partners. There's an entire structure in place to keep you protected. And that was really what was missing in my previous life. And that's where chemsex got out of control. There was no structure. There was just me bouncing off of one party to another, trying to catch on to something that was real, but looking for
physical and connection, physical connection and mental connection, and not really finding it.
No, it's like knocking on the wrong door over and over again, and hoping maybe this time I'll get lucky eventually. It's Einstein's definition of insanity. How can you expect something to change if you keep doing the same thing over and over again?
There you go. You've knocked the hammer on the head there. Yeah. We are actually coming to the end of our time. Unfortunately, it's been really lovely having you on. Is there any?
It went by so quickly.
It does, doesn't it? It's an hour goes really, really quickly. Is there any? If anyone's like interested in well, if they're in early recovery and they want to explore yoga and massage and so on, do you have any advice to people where they could go or what they should do if they want to explore more like stuff like that?
So delete Grindr and download Meetup. That's number one thing. Maybe don't delete Grindr because you're gonna download it 2 days later, but at least limit the usage and go to Meetup. And there's 2 groups. There's Gay Mates that has a lot of there's 2. So Andy Sage was the owner of the group. He's no longer with us, but there's a group of people that are looking after it, and they're very lovely and they're very creative, and there's a lot of events that are happening. There's still naked exchange massages still happening in Neil's yard. You should definitely check it out. Even as a starting point, just to experience what it feels like to be naked with someone in the room, to feel seen and to see others, and just notice what's happening. Even if there's some judgment, just be aware that gaining that sense of self-awareness is so important. Do that. And then as for yoga, you have to go to Brewer Street Yoga. Oh my God. Matt. Sorry. Yes, Matt. Matt, who's leading the venue, and he's the mastermind behind the whole project. I mean, you have so many different classes. They also do naked yoga classes. This is a community. It's not just a commercial space, which it is, but it's also
just so for context for anyone watching this, these are things that are in London.
Yes, they're in London. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. I believe your audience is more UK based, so I'll just
UK based. I also get Australians and Americans.
You do,
there's all sorts of people watching this, so I just wanted to put the context.
So great, and so Brewer Street Yoga and then Gay Mates on Meetup. These are the 2 places to experience these 2. You have different varieties and different events, so go check them out now if you are in the Netherlands. Naked nude yoga Amsterdam, I believe. Just look for nude yoga in the Netherlands and on Meetup, and you're gonna find a lovely
be careful when you Google that. You don't know what's gonna pop up.
You might see me.
That's the thing.
Yeah.
So if anyone's listened to this and they've connected or just felt like they've connected with some of the stuff you said, where can they get a hold of you?
The name of my website is Bodyquake, as an earthquake, but Bodyquake, like a shake the booty. So bodyquake.nl. Sorry, that's creeping in. You can find me on Instagram, thisbodyquakes, and you can just connect with me on Facebook, Adam Nathan Schultz.
Fantastic.
Everybody's welcome to drop me a message, and I can give you all kinds of advice. And follow it.
Fantastic. And it's so as with me, and you know the work I do, and I know some of the work you do, and it's so important with representation and showing that you're proud and out. And yes, I had these issues in the past, but I've done something about it. And people like you are important. And I'm so happy you came on and talked with me.
Right back at you. I was a privilege.
And next time you're in London, I'll take you to the Buff event I'm probably going to tonight.
Please. I would love to. I really, really would. So I'll be in touch.
Fantastic.
Who knows what that's... But so, on that note, yes, we are planning a trip, so we'll be in touch.
We'll be in touch. Thank you very much for coming on. It's been absolutely a pleasure.
Thank you.
Have a really, really good weekend, and I'll hopefully see you in the new year.
Thank you so much. This was fantastic.
It was fun. Absolutely. Have a good Christmas. Bye. And that was Adam from the Netherlands. Absolutely a joy to talk to him. And it was so interesting talking about naturism and yoga and massage as a deal to deal with recovery. And it's so important because one of the things we do in drug taking is we lose contact with ourselves, and we need to reconnect with ourselves when you come out of addiction. So thank you very much for Adam to come on. It was absolutely a pleasure to have him on. I'll already be back next week, and I'll announce my guest this coming Tuesday. So have a great evening, and I'll see you next week. Bye.